Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Huttons Consumer Connect webinar series. And thank you very, very much once again for spending your precious Saturday afternoon with us. All right. My name is JY and I'll be your host for today. To make sure that we keep to our schedule, we will open up for a few questions during the Q&A portion towards the end of the webinar. In case we don't have a chance to answer your questions, we do apologize, but feel free to approach the Huttons agent who has invited you today. As we are in phase 1 of the circuit breaker being lifted, many of us are returning to work, industries are slowly starting again. Nonetheless, quite a fair portion of the workforce is still working from home. In my opinion, the government is taking a cautiously optimistic view and allowing our economy to slowly regain its footing. So back to Singapore and the real estate in general. Real estate forms the bedrock of our economy. A huge percentage of our GDP can be traced back to real estate, from construction, property management, hospitality, and even development. So understanding the systemic shocks and black swan events in real estate will allow us to better position to make informed decisions. Today, we have Mr. Aidan Pang to share with us why the property market is expected to remain resilient in the face of headwinds stemming from the coronavirus all the way to the global trade uncertainty. So if you see in Singapore, we have one of the highest home ownership rates in the world. And most Singaporeans are highly invested in real estate. And I guess all of us are concerned about the values of our property. In fact, prices are just a function of demand and supply. Understanding the drivers for demand will boost our overall knowledge and confidence in the market. Aidan will also touch on this. After understanding the market, he will also move on to brief on how we can identify assets using the master plan. So if we go back to the textbook theory, the root of arbitrage or profit usually involves information asymmetry. Understanding the master plan will give us an edge on the information that will be beneficial for our real estate decisions. So a little bit about Mr. Aidan Pang. Mr. Aidan Pang holds a Master of Science degree in Real Estate from NUS. He has more than 10 years of working experience in this industry. He has acquired in-depth knowledge in various market segments from Singapore, Australia, Japan, Malaysia, and even the UK. And has owned or currently owns several local and overseas properties. Since 2013, Aidan has been actively sharing his insights on property sales and mortgage lending at iProperty, Smart Expo, Edge Property seminars, as well as being interviewed on CNA 938 Live. So with a strong emphasis on property portfolio management and asset progression for his clients, Aidan has consistently achieved top producer awards in Huttons. So without further ado, I'll invite Aidan to explain why the property market will rebound post-COVID-19. So Aidan, over to you.
Okay. Can everybody hear my screen? Okay, let me share my screen first. Okay. All right, thanks JY. Thank you for sharing this very lovely introduction of mine. Today, really is a privilege here to share with so many of you here why property will rebound post-COVID-19. I think this is a topic of heart with many of us wondering what's happening now. I remember when I was during the undergraduate days, there was actually SARS back in 2003. It was actually a very interesting period because everyone was really, really worried because SARS was something that, all of us couldn't really see what's happening ahead of us. And of course, property will also be something that that is really looking a very important portfolio for many, many of us. So, but back then, I realized that there wasn't any impact on the way we work, live, and etc. because there was really no Zoom. And today, all of you will be able to join us because of this technology. And I think that is really something that is very, very interesting. So that gives us some idea. While we are now back in home, looking at this seminar, actually property agents like us and our sales consultants, we are not able to actually go out there to do any physical viewing. So I think with that, we'd like to find out what has the property been doing so far and whether property will actually rebound going forward. So let us take a look. Now, first of all, I'd like to do a disclaimer first, because today's presentations and materials are used merely for educational purposes. So it is on an as it is basis, and any omissions or errors herein is really, you cannot be held liable for this. So please do consult our consultants who brought you in here today, and hopefully we can share more insights with you on a one-to-one personal basis. Now, today my scope of topic will be this. While I'm at home here, I was trying to scope the presentations to understand what's happening on the property market and whether the rebound will come during this period. So first thing first, I'd like to touch on the current COVID-19 situation that will impact the market so far from January to the month of May. Of course, I'd like to go back in time, back in 2003, to look at how the impact of SARS on the Singapore residential market is. Of course, then I'll also look at the 6 important key drivers for Singapore property rebound, and to identify the next right property with the URA master plan. I think it's important that we look at some opportunities as well, if let's say the property rebound is going to take place. And of course, I will end off with my conclusion. Now, in January 2020 this year, it was actually a very, very interesting period. Why so? Because we actually had the most number of record sales in January. So this, in fact, from these top 10 selling projects here, you could see that a lot of the projects are actually selling very, very well in the month of January. All right. So what happened here is that we actually made the best performing month in January in terms of number of sales that was done. In fact, the sales were able to move so well in the month of January because they are actually very competitively priced, and there was actually some foreigner buyers in the market. And of course, January sales shows that even though the threat of the virus was there, people were actually willing to step into the market and continue to buy what they need to do so. So we have about 618 units that were sold back in January. Now, new sales in February actually made another jump of 57.3% in February 2020. Now, if you take a closer look at my cursor here, you realize that from the month of January of 2020, where we have 620 units sold, we actually went up another 57.3%, and the total sales recorded was 975. So that was actually a good increase over the January numbers. So despite the COVID worries that came on, where China reported their first cases, I remember over in the CNY, we were kind of worried because we understand that there were more cases coming up from Japan, in China, Wuhan. So that really caused a lot of a bit of worries in the minds of many. But nonetheless, we see a good increase in the number of unit sales jump in February as well. Now, however, new home sales actually declined 32% from the month of February 2020 because show flats were closed and more launches from developers were actually pushed back and delayed from the month of March onwards. Now, developers sold actually 660 private home units, a decline of 32% from the 900 plus units in the month of March. So that was where property market starts to grapple with the vagaries of the economic situation as well as the COVID-19 situation. So no doubt, analysts were already trying to share that maybe in the month of April, numbers will come down even further. So let's take a look for the month of the first quarter as a whole. Now, as the first quarter as a whole, preliminary numbers showed that prices only dipped 1.2% in the first quarter. But in the actual numbers that was released in end April, there was only a 1% decline in the Q1 of 2020. So things were still doing okay. In terms of price movement wise, it was only a 1% decline. So this is just to give you a flavor of things that's happening for the first quarter so far. So as COVID-19 situation worsened and government coming out to do more measures with the inter-agencies coordination work, with the different ministers coordinating a lot of COVID-19 measures and restrictions, analysts were getting a bit more grimmer. So they were expecting prices to decline up to as high as 8%. Now, this is, however, not as deep or as steep a decline of 24.9% over the 4 quarters in the global financial crisis that we actually experienced, which I'll touch a little bit more on that later. Now, successive rounds of cooling measures in the past have actually built up a lot of prudence, and people were not really so worried about the prices coming down because a lot of the buyers were ready to buy despite the cooling measures, which I will again touch on that a little bit more later as well. So the URI index have actually risen over a 10 years period from 2010 to 2020, a 9.1%. So in terms of prices running ahead of fundamentals, it wasn't really a big issue, all right? And overall, analysts were expecting 20 to 30% fewer private home sales compared to the 9,000 plus units that were sold for the year of 2019. Now, next, I'd like to highlight to you some very interesting numbers in the month of April. Indeed, we fell to a 5-year low in terms of the private home sales in the month of April. Analysts were right and spot on. So what happened was that I picked out some of the projects that were similarly hitting the high numbers, contributing to the high January numbers in the record year for the January month. And then I observed 3 projects. And over here on your screen, I highlighted Jadescape, Park Exstar, and Park Clementes. And I realized that the average price, the medium average price, actually didn't fall at all. In fact, Jadescape was one of the RCR projects that actually edged up in terms of the average PSF prices. And I think that is very encouraging despite April registering a very lower sales number compared to the previous months. And in the month of April, and this is where every one of us, including myself, are prevented or we are not able to go to do our physical viewings, showing resale flats, bring customers to the sales galleries. So all this could not be done, all right? So what happened is that prices remain firm, as I highlighted to you over these 3 projects. Just a benchmark for you to compare. Now, April sales numbers fell to a 5-year low. So how many units did we do in April? We actually did 277 units. It's about 58% dropped from the month of March, down about 62.4% year on year. Now, that means to say, from year on year, from March of last year, 2019, we have actually fell quite a fair bit. But from a month on month, it's about 58%. And however, having said that, we are still above the lowest all-time low of 108 units that was sold in January 2009, when global financial crisis was creating the maximum fear back then. So we are really not that worse off compared to the year 2009, where only 108 units were sold. And analysts were sharing that they estimated the median price for April sales was about 1,000 to 2,000 per square foot. So this is something that you may want to take note, and this is the range that the units continue to move in this current climate. Now, moving on, new home prices are unlikely to change. Why is this so? Because we feel that the prices for HDB and private properties are likely to remain to be the same, despite a hike in the construction cost, which is inevitable. As you hear from our minister, Lawrence Wong, he actually mentioned, he's also the Minister for National Development. He has also mentioned that more restrictions on the dormitories and the way we operate in the construction sites are going to change, and there's going to be a lot of regulatory measures that's going to take place. So a lot of costs will actually comes in. Now, what happened is that analysts have also predicted that there could be an increase of 7 to 10% in terms of the construction costs for private condominium projects. So what does that translate to? It actually translates to a 2 to 3% increase in the property selling price. But however, this may actually be absorbed by the developers in view of the current COVID situation. So in all fairness, I think home prices are unlikely to remain unchanged because of the fact that construction costs, on the other hand, are also going up as well. We will talk a little bit more about developers' margin at a later slide. Now, next, if you look at this chart here, what we really want to illustrate to you is this. If you observe from January onwards all the way, we've actually been hitting higher and higher numbers. But in the month of April, we actually had a year-on-year fall compared to year of April 2019. The drop was actually quite significant. It's about 62.4%. But on a month-on-month, it's about 660 to 277 units. Now, this is really because of the circuit breaker measures in place. Now, however, having said that, in the month of April, when circuit breakers started from 7 April, we realized that 100 units were actually sold in the month of April. And it's really amazing. People are actually adapting to the fact that we could actually view show flat units via virtual tours. So these are some very interesting phenomena that has been taking place. Now, this is not new. In fact, in China and many other overseas countries, virtual viewings of show flats units are done, and units have been selling in spite of buyers not able to go to the sales gallery. So this is something noteworthy. Now, so in the January 2009, where I mentioned earlier, where 108 units were sold, there was no circuit breaker. I need to say, people could able to go into the show flat, touch and feel, have a feel of the layouts of the fittings and the finishings. But in the month of April, we achieved more despite the circuit breaker. So I think that is very, very encouraging signs that the underlying demand is still there. Now, so the initial worries is that sales will be dismal, but it wasn't. Buyers were receptive, like I mentioned earlier. It's a slight shift in terms of the buyers' behavior, that they were able to view the units virtually and understand what has happened. Now, demand for property is also resilient. Now, what do I mean by demand for property is resilient? Is that buyers are going into flowing into the concept that the long-term investment is actually more important than a short-term buying of the property just for speculative reasons. And a buyer are basically ignoring the near-term uncertainties. Now, if we have a look at the virtual viewing period solely from the 7th to 30th April, we realize that there were 97 units that were closed, on average about 4 units per day. But when virtual viewing kickstart 100% from the 1st to 31st May, I'd like to share some news with you. In the month of May, we actually closed 484 units. Wow, that is amazing. That's on average 16 units per day. Now, with 16 units per day, it's actually 5 times the number of sales that we are actually seeing right now. And overall, comparing the month on month, we are looking at about this increase in the sales number by 75%. And all this done by looking at the show flat units virtually, right at the convenience of our home. So what are the thinking behind this 484 units buyers? We are also very, very surprised that buyers are able to confidently understand the product, zoom into the needs of what they want, and eventually going to the purchase confidently with our salespeople. So I think that's something that I want to share with you. I want to bring you some good news that actually buying is still ongoing at this current moment. Despite all of us are still at home, on the weekend, I should be out there, but I'm here doing the webinar with you. Now, if you look at this, we're actually seeing that there are actually 6 consecutive months whereby the number of unit sales actually exceed the number of launches. So, but it was cut short over here because of the circuit breaker. And I think May will again see the continuation of a very strong pattern whereby the number of sales is more than the number of units launched by developers. Now, having said that, what about resale prices? Because I've touched quite a fair bit from January to May on the new units movement in terms of the volume, in terms of what is moving. But resale prices actually hold quite firmly. In the month of May, we are only seeing a 0.6% lower in terms of price year on year compared to 2019. About 171 units were resold in the month of May, again, with no physical viewing of the units. And this is actually a 43% decrease, of course, from the 300 units that were sold in April, according to SRX figures. But overall, our prices didn't decline from April. In fact, we were marginally up 0.1% versus April numbers. So this is something for us to also look forward to. Resale prices are really holding up well at this moment as well. Now, having looking through the numbers in terms of whether new sales or resale, let's look at the impact of SARS on the Singapore market. Because I think this is a period whereby a lot of people will start to compare between this period versus what happened now in today's COVID-19 situation. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to this first red box. Now, this first red box were actually units that were launched in the first 2 quarters prior to the March of 2003, where we witnessed the first case. So what happened in the 2 quarters, 2002 Q3 to 2002 Q4, we actually witnessed that developers sold 2,818 units. Now, how was it after that? For the quarter month of 2003, Q1, what happened in Q2 and Q3? We realized something. Developer launched 3,562 units, but they again sold 3,165 units. And again, these are more than what was sold before the 2 quarters when SARS occurred. No, I think this really augurs well that buyers are not so concerned about a situation resulting from a health issue. All right, so this is something I want to point out to you. Now, we have various virus outbreak like SARS and H1N1. Now, let us see what happens. Now, in the Asian financial crisis from 1999 to 2000, we actually see an upward bound of about 40.4%. In terms of the recovery, where prices are moving upwards. Similarly for SARS, prices also moved upwards about 56.5% from the year of 2003 to 2008. And surprisingly, after global financial crisis, prices continue to move up as well, 62.2% from the year of 2019 all the way to 2013, before the TDSR and ABSD's measures were introduced to the market. And I'll touch a little bit on that as well. But we are seeing a stronger recovery than the previous. So will we again see a repeat this time for the COVID-19 period? So it is something that we need to be watchful and something that we need to look back and draw upon the lessons learned and see what we can do going on from here. Now, I'd like to basically share with you some quick slides because we actually try to look at prices and understand how they actually do in different districts. Now, the various districts I'm going to show you here is not in full. We cannot show you everything, but we're going to show you some districts and allow you to have a flavor. Now, in District 3, on a compounded annual growth rate, District 3 actually grew by 6.2%. Now, what is the impact of 6.2%? And where do we start from? We started from SARS period. So imagine you buy a property in the SARS period and you help all the way to the end of 2020, this period, you actually make 6.2% on a compounded annual growth rate. And now let's see what happened in other districts. And I'm going to flash very quickly. District 5, 6%. District 9, almost close to 7%. District 10, similarly, our District 9 in our core central region, it went up a CAGR of 6%. District 11, 5.8%. District 14 in the east, 6%. District 15, a very well-liked East Coast area, CAGR of 6%. District 18, you have 5.5% in the likes of Pasir Ris, Tampines area, 5.5% CAGR. District 19, the Northeast region, where there's many ongoing projects where buyers are looking into it right now, 5.9% CAGR. We have District 20, 7.7% CAGR. And this is basically a summary of the various CAGR that I flashed early on. Now, if you observed, if you were to assume the lowest CAGR value of 5.5, right here, say for District 18, if you had bought a property of 500,000 back in 2003, where the year of the SARS, and if you held on that property all the way until today, 2020, you actually made a profit value worth of 742,000. Now, that is just by you holding on to the property. And this is really awesome. So for those that bought into SARS and you continue to hold on your properties, congratulations. And we purposely choose a reference point back to SARS because we want to show people that by investing in a crisis like SARS, it can also be profitable. So next, after looking at SARS and how prices in terms of compounded annual growth rate is, I'd like to move on to the 6 important key drivers for Singapore property rebound. Now, facts and figures do not lie. Facts and figures also give us the understanding of certain benchmark for us to draw lessons and for us to have the confidence in our decision making. So I'd like to move on to the 6 key drivers here, where a lot of analysis, a lot of information is being put. So please bear with me as I walk you through to the 6 key important drivers, which I think would give us an idea whether a Singapore property rebound will take place. First thing first up, there's a few factors here I'd like to run through. Number 1 will be the key economic forecast, the important demographic trends that affect the current market today, the current demand and supply dynamics, which is important because we are in an oversupply situation. No doubt, no matter how much demand there is or little there is, we cannot absorb the supply and prices will not move up. low interest rate environment. Are we today in a low interest rate environment? Is that helpful from a buyer's perspective? Cooling measures. There have been a slate of cooling measures that was introduced right from 1997 all the way in the early 2000s, 2013 total debt servicing ratio, and as recently as 2018 July, where ABSD was raised for Singaporeans buying their second property from 5% to 7%, and eventually to 12% now as a second property for Singapore buyers. And for foreigners buying their first property, a 20% ABSD. So all these, how do they affect prices? And do we need to be worried about them? And of course, finally, Singapore residential property market. Are we still a preferred asset class in the region? And are we a safe haven? So these are the 6 drivers I'll be going through with you. So please allow me to share with you now. Now, in terms of the COVID-19 crisis and the impact on the Asia GDP growth. Now, overall, IMF have given us a very good overview. It's going to be the worst recession since the Great Depression, and it's going to be expected to come down to 3%. I would say that this is a synchronized, engineered contraction, because since the month of February, where China and afterwards, where US started to get worried in March and subsequently in April, we have many big countries, big economies, including Japan, I remember, together with Singapore. In the early April, we started all the COVID-19 measures and restrictions. It was really a lockdown that was causing all the activities to stop, and all economic and manufacturing activities, all the retail activities, all grind to a halt. Now, this really means that the contraction is for real, because it is an engineered one. Now, interestingly, we realize that China actually will only be declined to a positive 1.2% growth prediction compared to a 6.1% growth, GDP growth forecast, actualization back in 2019. So China on the whole is still growing, and we have positive news coming out from there. With the lockdown being removed, we see people going out to going to the eateries, to the restaurants, to the shopping. People buying up, the Hermes bags. People buying properties again with a vengeance. So I'm not sure whether is that a revenge buying or what, but it does really a pent-up demand. So the slowdown is real in China, but we are still expected to be a positive growth of 1.2%. Now, the prospects of 2021 are uncertain according to IMF forecast, but I'd like to bring you through to the various crises. If you look at the oil crisis, the Asian financial crisis, and the global financial crisis, you realize that there's always a very sharp rebound for each of the crises that has happened. And really, IMF is also expecting for 2021, we expect the rebound to be real and strong. So the V-shaped recovery is something that will come for the mere fact that from a lockdown to no lockdown to activities coming on stream. So I'll share a little bit more later on the Singapore side of things. So this is the current situation. Now for Singapore, we are expected to contract by 3%. According to MTI, the forecast for this year is a -7% to a -4% GDP growth. So there's no growth. In fact, there's going to be a contraction. And it's going to be the worst since our independence. Like what PM Lee has mentioned and what our DPM Heng Swee Keat has shared with us, this is unprecedented times. So in terms of the numbers, it's very grim from what you see. But what's going to happen next is more important than where we are now currently. Now, so what happened here is that, like I mentioned here, this is the current forecast. So in 2019, we were only growing about 0.7%. This is really on the back of the US-China trade tensions that was brewing and happening since 2018. And in 2019, our GDP growth was only 0.7. And this year, we're expecting a -4 to -7%. Now, different industries will be affected differently. The most severely affected will be, of course, accommodation, air transport, and of course, the arts, and a lot of the self-employed people. For any outward exported-oriented industries, they'll be moderately affected. And of course, for food services, retail, and land transports, these are significantly affected. So I think different sectors will have different growth trajectories because of the way they're affected differently. Now, so I'd like to look and zoom into this unemployment rate. Now, unemployment rate in Singapore has always been in the low twos. So where are we now versus the PPI? Now, what is PPI? PPI is the property price index. Now, if you look through this cycle here, currently our property price, our unemployment rate is hovering about 2%. Now, in the first Q of 2020, unemployment rate is about 3.3%. So the government is trying to introduce a lot of stimulus packages. And in fact, we have 4 budgets that came on this just to help Singaporeans to save our jobs, to save the SMEs, and to ensure that the cash flows are really there for businesses to continue to operate. Now, as we see this, we realize that as long as unemployment rates is low or coming down, property prices will actually go up. Similarly, same thing, at the back of the global financial crisis where government introduced a lot of stimulus measures and support packages. As the unemployment rates fall down from this, you realize that property prices continue to move steadily upwards. So this is something that we need to be watchful of. And as of now, the government is trying the best to ensure that unemployment rate continues to be low. Next, how about the GDP annual growth rate? Looking back at things that we understand that the growth is going to be -4 to -7. You realize of the different issues that we have, be it the Asian financial crisis or be it the global financial crisis, as our Singapore annual GDP have a V-shaped rebound over these 2 spots here, you realize that property price index similarly also went up as well. So it's important to really be very watchful of the GDP annual growth rate. That will really give us some signals of things that will happen going forward. Next, now, if we look at the forecast by MTI, I'm really sure that they are generally more conservative. So what happened here is that, let's look at UOB. Now, UOB did a very interesting sharing with us. So they actually divided the recovery into 3 stages: V-shape, U-shape, and L-shape. So from here, they actually concluded that it's a 55% probability that we will have a U-shaped recovery, 55% by end of 2020. So it's a U-shape where UOB is concerned, yeah? So it's quite interesting. So what happened here is that, let's look at DBS. Now DBS is also similarly looking at a U-shape. They are looking at about 5 months of quarters of contraction. And they expect the GDP growth forecast to be about -5.7%. At the lower end of the -4% to -7, at the lower end of the -4 GDP growth rate. So they're looking at about Singapore economy to be hitting about 5.7%. But with that, they're also forecasting the GDP growth rate to actually hit somewhere higher in the range of, in the year of 2021, to be a range of maybe between 2 to 6%. So there's going to be a rebound for sure. And of course, looking at this, in fact, they have started to track where the trajectory of the past recession starts from. In fact, when they place the different Asia financial crisis, the global financial crisis, and COVID-19 at the same start point, they realize something, and I observed something. They realize that the contraction comes very, very fast, very sharp, but the rebound starts similarly, progressively faster as well. But it really depends on how long and how far we need before the whole economy bounce back to the same levels, pre-COVID levels. So these are numbers and these are trends that we need to watch out for. But we do think that once economy starts to go into the certain traction of things where people are able to fly, trades can be ongoing, the domestic economy is picking up, I think we would definitely be able to see the economy GDP growth doing much better. Now next, we also see a big increase in the month of May in USA. You actually see for non-farm payrolls that just came out recently in June 5th, early last week. What happened is that non-farm payrolls actually went up by 2.5 million instead of the projected decline of 8.3 million. Unemployment rate fell 13.3%, much lower than the 19.5% estimate forecast. So jobs-wise, it was supposed to be a very grim situation, but it turns out otherwise in the US. Now, what happened to the S&P 500 is very, very interesting. I've never seen this before. S&P 500 index actually went down all the way in the month of mid-March. I remember mid-March was really bad. What happened? It went down all the way to about 2,200 plus, and it finally rebounded back for S&P back to the 3,232 level point. and we are still having COVID cases, as far as US is concerned. But you see, as the COVID cases come off, what happened is that the S&P 500, the confidence level, the funds and the retail are buying into the market. So that tells us something about what is the market experiencing right now on the back of stimulus by the US government, on the back of the Fed coming down to keep interest rates low. I think these are very, very supportive of the current stock market situation. And as well, for me personally, it's a function of the confidence that the people have in the stock market. Now, next, there's a few reasons why S&P continue to climb higher. And I think we want to also understand in the biggest economy out there in the United States, why are stocks and the market sentiments getting bigger and better? Now, there's a few reasons. Because number one, the reopening of the economy, airlines, domestically, retailers, cruise lines are moving ahead again. Activities are resuming, rebounding faster, more rigorously. It appears that the worst rapid, the very, very sharp decline that we see in the middle of March is past. And we also seen a similarly dramatic recovery. Now, with a combination of the Fed money, of course, with the possibility of a vaccine that's going to be introduced, I think this all augurs well for confidence in the market. And this is where I want to share what's happening in the States before I share on Singapore side of things. Now, if you look at that, currently, I actually use this Milken Institute. They actually track the number of vaccines and treatments that currently, progressively, that's currently under research, under clinical trials. We are currently seeing a lot of vaccines going past the phase 1, going to phase 2 into human trials. So I think there are a lot of positive news. Hopefully we will see a vaccine that works by end of this year. That will actually help the economy in terms of the confidence, in terms of the ability to open up more and allow people to go back to work, etc. So how is the Singapore stock market compared to the US stock market? And how does that help, or how does that affect our property price index? So similarly, in the Asia financial crisis in 1998, or be it in the global financial crisis, once I realized something, that once the stock market actually went up, the confidence level kind of have a similar calming effect on the property index. And the PPI, shaded in the blue, continues to move up as well. So this is something that I want to be watchful of on the local STI index. Now, how has the local STI index done? Now, in fact, the peak was about 3,281. In March, middle of March, about early 20th March, we did about 2,233. The fall was about 31.9%. It's huge. So imagine you have a $10,000 portfolio of shares or $100,000 portfolio of shares. Your share value has dropped 31, 32%. But things have also taken a change since then. We have seen that the current levels as of yesterday, 2,684, from the highest peak to the drop, today the drop is 18.2%. So it was not as fierce as 31.9% because we have also rebounded from the bottom from 2,233. We've rebounded all the way to 2,684 points as of yesterday. That marks a 20% increase. So what a volatile ride, from an 18% decline and all the way up to 20%. But what I really want to share with you is that market has kind of like calmed down where the stock market is concerned. It's telling us that people are having that little bit more confidence going back to the market and slowly buying into shares that they find value, companies that they find that it's worth relooking at, because it's time to look at those shares and values of those companies. Now, of course, when the companies are doing well, people employment is definitely at a better level. The confidence level in the property market will also continue to do well. I think that's what we really want to share. So if you look at the global financial crisis and the PPI, the stock market dropped 67% in 1997, but our property price index went down 44.9%. In the global financial crisis, property price index, the STI index went down 62.4%, but our property price index went down with 24%. What happened to COVID-19 for first Q? We only dropped by 1%. And today, our stock market has only went down by 18.2% as of yesterday. So I think in terms of the price fall magnitude, it's going to be muted as far as property prices are concerned. Now, next, I'd like to go on to the next section. It's on demographics. Now, What about demographics? Now, for demographics, it's very important because demographics will tell us what are certain trends that happens in the today population and what are people doing where property is concerned. Now, number one, I'd like to quickly run through with you is that as of 2019, based on the SingStat statistics, we have about 5.7 million population. Now, I'm not sure whether you know, there's a white paper that was in 2013. We wanted to hit a projected population about 6.5 to 6.9 million. So there's going to be, there's still a gap now to 2030, but we're going to see what's happening. Now, in terms of the population growth residents, it's about 4.3 million. All right, so that's something that's interesting to take note of. Home ownership has went up. We are about 90.4% of us are owning our own houses. So it's unlike other countries. Singapore enjoys one of the world's highest owner occupation rate. All right. Next, I'd like to bring your attention to this first red box here. Now, based on 2019 statistics, about 78.6% of us live in public housing, that's HDB, and about 21.4% of us stays in the private or the landed properties. So this is the breakdown that you need to know. And I want to share with you something is that the ratio or the percentage of private owners living in landed and private properties have actually gone up in that sense compared to 2009, 10 years ago. All right. Next, in terms of the living arrangement, we saw that there are more people in 2019, about 54%, 53 to 54% are now living either alone or they are a single parent or they are couples with no kids. So there are more and more family needs for maybe 1 and 2 bedrooms, if I could do a deduction from here. So we can actually see that more and more people are maybe do not need smaller housing, but on the other hand, about 46.9% of the population will still demand the 3 and 4 bedrooms because they have children and so on and so forth. Okay, now next, I'd like to touch on the HDB dwelling numbers. Now, the HDB dwelling numbers is also very interesting. As we know, the government ramped up the number of BTOs over the years, 15,000 to 20,000 annually and stuff like that. Now, we see that there's actually an 11% increase in terms of the number of HDB units that's being built for BTOs for young people and for families who starts up, as a first step in their property journey. Now, we also see that for private properties, it has actually gone up by 50% compared to year 2012. Now, that's to me is quite a lot. And so if the population continues to grow, would there be more demand compared to 8 years ago in 2012? Is that somewhat a trend of things whereby people are going to aspire to or wanting to move into private properties or wanting to invest in private property for that purposes? So I think that's something that we need to be watchful of. I think that also explains why new sales has been going up strongly in the month of January, in the month of February this year, before COVID-19 hits us in Singapore. All right. Now, next, I also observed that the 1% and the number of 1% and 2% numbers also actually went up significantly as well. So there's something to be watchful of. So there is going to be demand and competition for people who wants to buy a 1-bedroom for their own use. Even though you could just be buying a 1-bedroom for your own investment. Yeah. Now, on the average household size, we actually seen that the average household size has gone down to 3.24%. Like, I think rightfully so, because we have more people now either living alone, single parent, or couple with no kids. We've seen more of those people. So the average household has come off from about 3.53 in 2012 to 3.24 in 2018. Now, in terms of population growth against the property price index, we have seen that with the population growth growing gradually over time, property price index also grow as well, steadily over time. Now, if we assume a 6.9 million population in Singapore by the year of 2030, we would expect, based on the 3.24 numbers of people per household, we roughly need about 350,000 homes, new homes. And that will comprise mainly of both the private and the HDB supply coming on. Now, this is actually very interesting. We think that these numbers actually means that if we were to hit 6.9 million, of course, this subject to the immigration policies and how many people the government is intending to allow overseas foreigners, PRs, to be introduced into Singapore island itself. Then we will see that there will be a correspondingly a very steady demand of new homes required, both on the private as well as the HDB front. All right. Now, I'd like to assure you, the household debt remains very, very sound in Singapore. What do I mean by that? Now, in 2019, right, the loan to value, let's say, imagine today a $1 million property, the bank lends you 75% for your first housing loan. That's a 75% LTV. But most of the families today in Singapore, their loan to value is only 49%. So they have actually paid off quite a fair bit. Now, if you bought a property at $1 million, if your LTV, whatever that you own to the bank now, is 490,000, will you want to sell your property at below $1 million, below your purchase price? Or will you want to sell above $1 million, above your purchase price? I think that is no-brainer. But having said that, it also means to say that a lot of the owners are holding on to positive cash values in their properties, assuming that they bought in the property and the property values have risen over the years. So a lot of us are actually paying our monthly rental, our monthly installment very, very regularly. And that's why our LTV is dropping over the years. Now, if you were to take a 30 years loan, at the end of the 15-year mark or so, you already paid down most of your loan as well, as you gradually pay off the monthly installments to the bank. Now, NPL, what is NPL? Non-performing ratio. I think it's important numbers because NPL is a number that's very carefully watched by MAS, where the banks have to report the numbers. Now, if NPL is low, that means that foreclosures or mortgage sales is not going to happen or it's going to remain low. And when NPL is very, very much under what we call under a certain rate, level, it really means that there is no bad debts, there are no people trying to sell their properties because they couldn't repay their monthly installment. I think that is a number that we need to be watchful of, but currently it's also doing at a very stable level at 0.5%. So that is currently just trying to share with you some numbers. Household debt is fine. NPL, non-performing loan ratio in the banks, where the banks are concerned, are all under a very, very safe margins today. Now, next, I'd like to come in and take a peek at what are Singaporeans' favorite economic assets in their hands. All right. Now, first thing first, financial assets. Now, in terms of financial assets, if you look at the number, just to take note, this is in $1 million in the year of 2018. So this figure here is about 2.2178551. All right. This amount worth value of assets is break down into two key areas. Number one, financial assets, and number two, residential property assets. Now, if you look at this, it's very interesting. Half of what we have in assets, almost close to 50% is in the value of our property. It's in the value of our property, be it in the HDB or be it in the private housing that we are looking at today. Now, so it does occurs to me that a lot of our equity, a lot of cash are all locked up in our assets. So this is something to take note, number one. Number two, is there a very high amount of mortgage, in terms of liabilities? We are looking at two areas, mortgage loans, personal loans. Now, if you look at mortgage loans, we are looking at just maybe a fraction, about maybe a 25% of the entire property assets is in loans. Now, that is something that's very, very interesting. So I'd like to give you a summary of things because I know it's not an easy slide to digest. If you look at this slide itself, you realize that our net worth in billion dollars, 1,850 billion worth of dollars in the net worth of assets. Our assets versus our liabilities is a vast difference numbers. So I'm very sure most Singaporeans are having their assets in financial assets in terms of cash, shares, and whatnot. But number one important thing to take note, more than close to 50% of the financial assets, positive assets that we have is all in property. So this is very, very important. And of course, I'd like to share with you another thing. The next topic I'm going to go on is basically the supply and demand dynamics. Now, it's a very simple few slides I want to share with you. Now, from the year 2020 and 21, all the way to 2023, we did a summary of things based on the number of units that's coming on stream the number of supply of units that's coming on is an average about 10,000 units per year. All right. So what is the demand that my research in Huttons department has come up with? Is that we realize that the average annual demand since 2010, close to about 10 years, in the last 10 years on average is about 11,500 units. So this is interesting because the number of annual demand, 11,500 units, seems to be more than the supply that's coming on stream. So do we need to be really worried about demand and supply equilibrium? So let me take a look at another slide. We also realized something. As of first quarter 2020, we have about 29,000 units unsold. This is a 33% lower than the previous high of the about 43,473 units. So we have been trending downwards since first Q 2019, right? So this 43,000 units that you see was actually in the year of 2008. That was looking back in the past, all right? And we have no problem absorbing all the units because I want to share with you something. All the units, all the 43,000 units were all sold. So despite concerns that there could be oversupply back then in 2008, especially in the year where the global financial crisis happened, units were totally taken. Yeah. And today we are only down to 29,000 units. And if let's say the annual demand is about 11,000 units or so, we are looking at between 2 to 3 years time, this supply of units will be finished and absorbed into the market. So please do not be too concerned or on worries about oversupply because there is no oversupply where the numbers are concerned in today's market. But of course, demand side of things is a function of many things. Demand side of things, would it still be on the 10 years average because of population policies, because of the demographics that I shared with you, because of your financial status, because of your employment status? There's a few factors. So we'll be watchful of these numbers as we go along moving forward. But I think it signals that things are doing pretty fine because in the month of May, we actually rebounded in terms of number of home sales. In fact, we did about 484 units alone in May without any physical viewing. So that shows that these 484 buyers probably know something that we don't know, that some of us do not know, and they are already buying in anyway, right? Now, next topic, very interesting. I like to share the interest rates that's likely to stay low till end 2021. As of now, if you observe my 3-month SIBOR, now 3-month SIBOR is basically the Singapore interbank lending rate. Now this lending rate allows you, the banks, to compute based on this plus a certain spread to lend you the money. So even though 3-month SIBOR is now 0.56, in the market, you're looking at about maybe averagely about 1.3 to 1.5% for your home loans that you're taking on, be it your current existing properties or be it you're buying a new home purchase. So if you're looking at 0.56% compared to last year, where 3-month SIBOR was 2%, you could really have a lot of savings. And I'm going to share with you in the next slide, which is very, very interesting. Now, put it this way. Imagine now, if you're looking at the table on your left, if you look at the table on your left, for 30 years, your monthly installment have actually come off $700, right? $700. Just by you looking at the interest rates that's actually as low as 1%. So I need you to understand, interest rates have actually gone down to about $1,200 if you're taking on a $1 million loan by you doing a home loan at 1%. Of course, currently average loan is about 1.3 to 1.5. But what I'm trying to share with you here is this. If you are able to save about $1,200 a month, you're looking at about easily $10,000 a year in terms of interest savings. So if you want to go out there and buy a property today, the interest savings is going to be significant. So do take advantage to do a refinancing or to look at the bank loans that's currently very, very attractive, and do speak of your Huttons associates or consultant who brought you here today. And of course, do take note, as we aged from 30 years, 25 years down to 20 years, because the loan tenure is getting shorter as we grow older, you realize that the monthly installment is getting higher and higher. So this is something I want you to take note as well. But I think the good thing is that interest rates is coming down. As we could see in the past, when interest rates is coming off, property prices continue to be going up. So I think this is a good news as well. I need to go faster because I'm running short of time. For the impact of cooling measures over the years, we realized a few things. There's many rounds of cooling measures, but I want you to understand the cooling measures have came, property prices have dropped 44.9% in 10 quarters. It recovered 40.4% over the next 6 quarters. And during the tech.com bubble, what happened? And also during the SARS period, prices also came off for 15 quarters, 20%. But do we have a rebound? After that, we do have a rebound from year 2004 all the way to 2008, a 58% increase. Now, again, back in the global financial crisis, we have a sharp 24% decline. But again, the rebound came. Now, the next slide I want to show you is the cooling measures that was taking place in the various stages. Now, it's very, very interesting. Despite cooling measures taking place and so many rounds of cooling measures taking place, property prices went up 62.2%. And in the 9th round of cooling measures that was introduced in July 2018, property prices dipped for maybe about 1-2 quarters before they rebound again. So I think it's very interesting about cooling measures, and prices seems not to have much impact because even though cooling measures were introduced, it seems a bit counterintuitive. But let's dive a bit into this now. So in 2013, we were introducing what we call the total debt servicing ratio. That was really about 6-7 years ago. And really, prices came off, right? But in 2018, which is about 2 years ago, when the ABSDs was raised from 7 to 12%, LTV for the first loan was coming off from 80 to 75%. There was only 2 quarters of decline, but after that, the index went back up again for 3 quarters, all the way up leading to 2019 end. And there was actually an increase of 3.4%. Now, as cooling measures being introduced, Singapore buyers become more adaptive. They learn and they expect cooling measures to be part of the property landscape. So they continue to work around it or work with it. And it's getting to lose its effects in some ways. Now, so what happened is that despite cooling measures, property really remains attractive. So this is really an enduring asset because it's going to be a very safe asset. It's not so volatile as compared to stocks moving up and down. And because buyers are tired of waiting for property cooling measures to be removed, they actually went on to buy within their means. Now, of course, Singapore is a safe haven. We top the region. We are number 1 in terms of the property price. In terms of the property price prospects, in terms of investment prospects, we have an uptick in terms of the interest from Hong Kong buyers, from China buyers. Because of the US-China trade tensions, because of the China-Hong Kong situation, we do have more people from these regions looking towards Singapore as one of the top regions for property investment. So very quickly, we are now ranked number 1, and in fact, consistently in the last 3 years, we are doing well as one of the buy recommendation in the region. We also rank number 1 for city investment prospects, as well as city development prospects as well. All right. The Chinese are coming up and snapping up homes in Singapore. So they are coming in, jumping in, and they're also picking up properties without looking at any physical show flats. And why are they doing so? Because they want to prevent a weakening yuan, and they want to hedge and buy into the Singapore dollar because of the fact that Singapore dollar remains strong. And this is the reason why buyers are from China are looking to buy into Singapore property. Wealthy Singaporeans are continuing to buy because they find that this is an opportunity. So they are continuing to buying in, and people know that money will depreciate during recession. They rather put the money in the productive assets with a good compounded annual growth rate, a good CAGR that is seen from 2003 from SARS. People are buying in because they know that property prices do hold and move up steadily over time. Now, so it remains attractive. This is a recent commentary back in last few days, back in the first day of June. Basically, as long as we have not seen significant number of homeowners defaulting, and because there's cooling measures of total debt servicing ratio and MSR, mortgage servicing ratio, that the banks needs to see when you apply a loan, the buyers today are on a healthy positions to begin with, and therefore the buyers are in a good position. And of course, we continue to be a safe haven, like what the author here has mentioned, and the property markets regularly recovers crisis after crisis and yielding positive yields. So we are on a good note. We have exceeded the full investment target that we have set by EDB. Micron, ExxonMobil are coming in. 13 billion has been invested in Singapore in the first 4 months. It exceeds the projection that we have, 8 to 10 billion for the whole year of 2020. We are the 4th largest, safest place to live in the world. behind Switzerland, Germany, and Israel. So we are also a very safe place post-COVID situation. So this is something for us to take note as well. And very quickly, in the last part, I'm going to end soon, is to identify the right next property with the URA master plan. How do we identify that? Now, so do go to the URA master plan, www.ura.gov.sg. Go into this button here, planning, and it will basically show you the concept plan. Now, concept plan is basically a review of the concept plans that we have from the Ministry of National Development. So it's to guide the way that we do and plan out the different land use, the intensity of the use, and the different uses, the different usages for different sectors of the real estate ecosystem. Now, with the in view of the 6.5 to 6.9 million by 2030, concept plans give us a guidance principles. Now, of course, we need to zoom in further to the master plan, which changes every 5 years. So do take a look, because there are a lot of articles on the individual master plans that share with you the plans on the transport, the rejuvenations of the parks, the different railway corridor, and etc. etc. All right. So these are the regional highlights that you need to look at. You can click in, have a look, and where the urban transformations taking place in different part of Singapore. I think this is very interesting. On a Saturday afternoon, you want to go into there, and you'll be amazed by the different exciting initiatives that the government has, the URA has for us to make us a global city. Now, so in the detailed planning, you can zoom into there. But next, I'd like to share with you some very quickly some projects that you could look in due to the master plan. One Pearl Bank, Riviera, Landmark in District 3. In District 5, the Jurong Lake District, Jurong Innovation District, you can look at Vista Grand, Park Clementes. In the Greater Southern Waterfront, you can look at Kentridge Hill, you can look at Avenue South. So do look at these projects. Ken U 16, upcoming project in the Central Area Transformation and under the Master Plan. In District 9, Core Central Region, the Iveria, the Urbania, it's St. Thomas. In District 10, you can look at Wilshire Residences, Leiden Green, Hill and Holland, Juniper Hill, the Height. Now all these are in District 10, looking towards the Holland Tanglin areas rejuvenation, the Orchard transformation, where lifestyle destination, lifestyle options have changed. And of course, in District 10 and 21, nearer to the Bukit Timah, Upper Bukit Timah stretch, you have the Bukit Timah Integrated Transport Hub, you have Foret, upcoming new project, US Kismis, Mayfair Modern, Royal Green, and 4th Avenue. And of course, District 14, you have Penrose, Park Esta, Resi 24, Noma Residences, and Catch. Now, these are all at the back of the Paya Lebar transformation. Many exciting things are happening there. So do speak to our sales consultant. District 15, you have Amber Park, Amber 45, Mayor Mansion, Neon, and Coastline Residences. These are mainly the freehold projects out there with the East Coast Rejuvenation, Marine Parade. There's some changes whereby there's underlying shopping malls. Of course, up and coming, the Thomson East Coast Line as well. So these are very exciting initiatives that you need to find out more. District 19, very popular Northeast region. We have Sengkang Grand, we have Pyrmont Grand EC, Affinity, near to the Cross Island Line by 2029. Florence Residences, we have Riverfront Residences, talking about Hougang Central transformation, talking about Paya Lebar A Base, we're talking about Lorong Halus transformation. So these are many initiatives that will guide you on your property purchase decision, because it will give you an idea how the property that are going to invest in or buying for own stay will be impacted by the different surrounding changes in the master plan and the exciting initiatives that's going to give you positive catalysts. Now, having said all this, I'm coming to an end. Now, if you were to look at these various price regions for trending upwards, is it a crisis or opportunity at the various stages from 2004 all the way to 2019? If you miss in 2003, you say that this is a crisis, I'm not going to be in it. If you miss in the global financial crisis, I'm going to skip this because I'm worried for my job. If you're going to miss in 2013 because of all the cooling measures coming in, is this going to be a crisis? You say that it's a crisis, I'm not going to buy properties because ABSD has gone up from 7 to 12%. Loan has come off from 80 to 75%. You're going to miss it. You realize something. Prices have been going up, whether it be OCR, rest of core central region, or core central region. Crises and opportunities are always there. So what do you see? Do you see today's low as tomorrow's high? In fact, a lot of us are seeing the high going up higher today's low of the many, many years ago becoming the high, higher and higher. So I think there are many, many reasons to be optimistic in different crises, but if you don't take actions, then I think these are just basically some charts that will just be shared with you again and again. Yeah. Now, I'm going on to my conclusion. So be it for a new launch versus resale, private property, be it a BTO or resale or HDB, do plan wisely for your next move. Now, these are the various prices. HDB prices, PSF is about 400 to 425. In today's level, we are almost back to 2011 level already in 2020 prices. So prices have come off, but they are continue to be stable. So if HDB is going to be the place for you to stay, you could do a move. Prices have not been moving much for the last 10 years. If you're looking at EC prices, resale, $800 to $900 PSF, this is another range. Resale EC prices have been going up as well. New EC prices are now doing about $1,000 to about $1,150. They have been trending upwards as well. Private resale prices are doing about $1,300 to $1,400 PSF. They've been trending up as well over the years. And private new sales, where number of buyers have actually been making the move in the May 2020 this year, we are seeing that prices are looking at about $1,600 to $1,900 PSF. Now, all these PSF are on average. So this is just to give you a flair and an understanding and flavor of prices today. And finally, I just want to do a last slide, just to have a recap on what has been shared so far. I know I've overrun. I'm very truly apologetic. But number one, key drivers for the next property rebound is definitely underway because the economy is really on the way to a recovery in some sorts with the lockdown measures being unreleased. So we are cautiously but surely there. Positive demographics I've shared with you supporting the residential market. There's genuine underlying demand. We do not have many units that is going to be left based on the past 10 years demand that we have seen so far. Low interest rates environment give us the opportunity to own an asset class that allow us to save on our interest rates for the next 5 years or so. Effective cooling measures. It has become a norm. People have accepted this as way of life. Yeah, and this is not going to be an issue. And beyond COVID-19, we also shared with you that Singapore remains an attractive safe haven and an investor choice. So with that, I hope you can thank the associates or the agent who has brought you in for this seminar. And I hope we have done to you a good idea on why we think that the next property rebound is on its way. Thank you. Thank you so much.